you so very much for tuning in to another episode with me. Today we're going to talk about an amazing book that I want to bring to your attention, and I know that you've heard a lot about it because there's so much conversation going on about this amazing book. And so I wanted to go ahead and just throw my little 2 cents in there. I did not expect to do this. However, it was a conversation that needed to be said with a completely different perspective on things, I guess. In a way, with the psychology background, I just look at things differently. And so I wanted to go ahead and bring that conversation to this platform. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. So thank you guys so very much. Welcome again. My name is Janelle. Today we are going to talk about, I finally got my hands on this amazing book called Start With Yourself, A New Vision for Work and Life by Emma Grede. Y'all, first of all, if you have not gotten this book, please do so because it is absolutely amazing, okay? We're going to go ahead and get right into it, but I want to make sure that you guys understand that, yes, this book is called Start With Yourself by Emma Grede. And yes, there's so much controversy around this amazing book. However, I want to let you guys know that there is a part that people were missing, and people probably still are missing. And so I wanted to go ahead and bring my portion, my perspective to this conversation. And so, yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. So over the last several weeks, I've watched conversation after conversation surrounding Emma Grede's book called Start With Yourself. And I've seen clips, I've seen opinions, I've seen people defending her, I've seen people criticizing her, and honestly, I stayed out of it. I stayed quiet. But not because I didn't have thoughts, but because I hadn't read the book. One thing I've learned is that I never want to build my opinion on someone else's interpretation. If I'm going to speak on something, I want it to come from reading it for myself. So I finally got my hands on a book. I've been highlighting it, taking notes, sitting with it, and asking myself difficult questions. And today, I don't want to give you a book review because I don't think this conversation is really about Emma Grede. I think Emma Grede became the case study for a much bigger conversation. A conversation about responsibility, preparation, character, opportunity, and the unseen cost of becoming. So, let me tell you what this book is about. I read right in the introduction. You don't even have to get far, and she already shares it with you. This is a book about mindset, about managing your emotions, clarifying your thoughts, and taking the right next step, all while holding a positive vision for your future. It's about collecting yourself after failure, expecting no shortcuts, but taking any you can find, and pushing hard for the wins. It's about thinking for yourself and finding your own path while learning from everyone else's mistakes, along with your own. While a lot of people look to me for guidance on scaling billion-dollar businesses, this book isn't just for entrepreneurs who hope to IPO someday. This book is for anyone who is tired of feeling like a passenger in their own life and wants something different for their future. Now, one thing I noticed immediately was that many of the conversations I seen online were responding to short clips instead of the full context of the book. That reminded me why context matters. A 30-second clip rarely tells the whole story, or for this matter, 3 minutes. Books give us context. Context changes conversations. So, on page 21, this is what I found. We're living in a culture where everyone feels aggrieved and takes the world personally. I don't think this is a productive way to live. This isn't to say that I don't understand why people feel resentful. I understand. I too was full of blame. And I grew up in a blame-drenched culture too. Nothing was ever anyone's fault. It was always the neighbor's fault or the government's fault. Nobody was talking about personal responsibility. A culture of blame is infectious, and it was in me too. When I got to the London College of Fashion and found myself in a sea of girls who had been privately educated, I felt furious with blame and feelings of injustice that I hadn't had the same privileges. I told myself that I'd never get through these classes. It would be impossible to succeed. And because everyone had a better start than me, they'd have a better ending too. I'm not the sort of person who can suffer getting second place, much less last. So I dropped out. When I finished reading that, I had to stop for a moment. Because to me, this wasn't just about business. It wasn't about pretending obstacles don't exist. It was about asking a different question. Not what can't I control, but what responsibility belongs to me? That challenged me. As I continued reading, I realized this book created four conversations. First, it created conversation, real conversation about business, leadership, responsibility, ownership, black women in leadership, mentorship, opportunity. Whether someone agreed with the book or not, it caused people to talk about important issues. Second, it revealed something. Some people read it and saw possibility. They saw areas where they needed to grow. They became curious. They reflected. The book became a mirror. Third, it exposed something. Not because the book was trying to expose people, but because our reactions often reveal what's already inside of us. For some people, it exposed hope. For others, frustration, comparison, resentment, fear, disappointment. Sometimes our strongest emotional reactions reveal something about us that deserves our attention. And finally, it made me ask a question. Before we ask what successful people owe us, have we asked what responsibility belongs to us? One of the reasons I bought this book wasn't because I wanted to prove her critics wrong. I bought it because I wanted to respect myself enough to think for myself. I wanted to read before reacting. I wanted to understand before forming an opinion. I think that's something we've lost in today's culture. We hear a clip, we adopt someone else's opinion, and then we repeat it without ever investigating it ourselves. That's not how I want to live. As I continued reading, another thought kept coming to my mind. I think one of the biggest mistakes we make is that we admire someone's outcome without respecting what it costs them. We see influence, we see the platform, we see the business, we see the opportunities, but we don't see the years, we don't see the rejection, we don't see the discipline, we don't see the sacrifices, we don't see the lonely decisions, we don't see what they had to say no to. We don't see the weight they carry simply because of the responsibility they've been entrusted with. We want the reward, but do we want the responsibility? Do we want the platform? Or are we willing to carry the weight that comes with it? From what Emma shares throughout the book, she talks about lessons she's learned, growth she's experienced, and areas where she's still growing. That stood out to me because maturity isn't pretending you've arrived. It's being honest enough to admit that you're still becoming. As Christians, we know something important. God is deeply concerned with our character. Sometimes we're praying for greater influence while God is working on greater integrity. Sometimes we're praying for a bigger opportunity while God is developing our patience. Sometimes we're asking for more responsibility while He's teaching us faithfulness with what we already have. Maybe it's pride, maybe it's anger, maybe it's comparison, maybe it's envy, maybe it's gossip, dishonesty, maybe it's always needing to be right. Whatever it is, God loves us enough not to ignore it. Sometimes what feels like a delay becomes an opportunity for God to shape us into someone who can carry greater responsibility. because character helps us steward influence well. Something else this book challenged me to think about. Sometimes we're waiting for someone else to open a door that God may be asking us to build. Now, hear me clearly. I believe in mentorship. I believe in community. I believe in successful women reaching back and helping others. And I believe God uses people. But I also believe that there comes a point where we have to ask ourselves, what responsibility belongs to me? Someone can recommend a book, but you still have to read it. Someone can mentor you, but you still have to apply what you've learned. Someone can introduce you to the room, but you still have to prepare before you walk inside. Someone can encourage you, but they can't become disciplined for you. They can't heal for you. They can't build for you. They can't believe for you. At some point, the question stops being who's going to open the door for me, and it becomes, what am I doing with the doors already in front of me? Sometimes you will have to build a door. Sometimes you have to knock on one no one else is knocking on. Sometimes someone else will open the door, but even then, you still have to do the work once you're inside. I don't think the biggest takeaway from this book is whether you agree with every sentence Emma Grede wrote. For me, the bigger lesson is this: read before you react, think before you repeat, prepare before you expect, and remember that the opportunities you're praying for will require a version of you that's prepared to sustain them. Maybe today the question isn't who's holding me back. Maybe the better question is, what is God preparing me for? If you've read the book, I genuinely love to hear what challenged you the most. And if you haven't, I'd encourage you to read it for yourself before forming your opinion. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. But before you go, if today's conversation resonated with you and you're looking for a quiet space to think clearly through the patterns, decisions, or pressures you're carrying, I'd love to invite you into the listening room. It's a 45-minute conversation where you'll have the space to be heard, reflect, and gain clarity. If that sounds like something you need right now, you can sign up using a link in my bio. I'd be honored to meet you there. Until then,